As readers, why do we find it difficult to revisit our favourite books? Former 5-star reads languishing unloved on our bookshelves. I mentioned in my classic and contemporary book pairings tag that as readers we are often driven by the desire for the new, the unheard of author, the brand new story, the book nobody else has spoken about. But are we completely ignoring a goldmine of treasure just waiting to be picked up and loved again? And I guess that begs a second question. Can you go back to a former flame? Are those cringy boyfriends from days gone by worth revisiting at all? Hi, I'm Leah, and welcome to Hide and Seek, and welcome to the Revisit 3 Favourite Books from Your Past tag. Now this is a new tag created by a new booktuber. Amy from Polyreader is an Australian booktuber who has only been on BookTube for about 4 to 6 weeks now, I think, and she's doing some amazing things. Like me, she does try to highlight many Australian authors. In particular, Amy's trying to focus on Australian women authors, and I'll link a playlist she has here for her favourite Australian women authors, and it's a great first video. So where do we go from there? Amy suggested to revisit some former favourites from about 10 years ago or your college years. And I'm going, well, my college years were a lot more than 10 years ago, just saying. So let's put my glasses on, put my vanity aside and revisit the 1990s. Because yes, that's how old I am. Now, what were the biggest selling books of the 1990s? I found this handy article from The Independent, and what was the #1 book of the 1990s by sales volume? Diana, Her True Story by Andrew Morton. Did I read it then? No. Would I read it again now? No. Some other books on here that I won't talk about. Bill Bryson had a couple on here as well. Delia Smith's cookbook came on here. Wild Swans by Jun Chang. What else? Arundhati Roy, The God of Small Things, her first book release. Silence of the Lambs, Thomas Harris. There are so many blockbusters on this list. Schindler's List by Tom Keneally. There are 2 on this list in particular I want to talk about. The first being the second biggest selling book of the 1990s, and definitely a story from my university days. Bridget Jones's Diary by Helen Fielding. My goodness, was this in the backpack of every single university graduate, in the carry-on luggage of every young Australian heading on the grand tour to London all through the mid to late 90s. I remember schlepping this around so many times. Now this isn't the original copy I owned back then. Like many university students, I moved a number of times and I bought and discarded this book so many times, but I think I will finally keep this edition because yes, it's a pretty penguin ink version. Now I haven't revisited this since the 1990s, and I mentioned in my Future Classics tag by Eric Carl Anderson that I wasn't sure that this was a classic just yet. I personally think it needs to marinate a little bit longer. I personally think that right now it's still in that awkward phase of not old enough to be quaint and quirky, but not new enough to be relevant. So I'd be interested to see how I go with it. But I'm looking forward to revisiting Bridget Jones's Diary by Helen Fielding because when it comes to my university days, really can't go much past Bridget Jones. Now on the second half of this, now it's not in the biggest selling books written in the 90s because it is perhaps every young girl's first favourite classic book. The first classic that incites girls to dreamy, lofty ideas of studying English literature and living in the world of Pride and Prejudice. Now, it doesn't hurt that the 90s did also give us the wonderful, the incomparable Colin Firth as Mr. Darcy, and perhaps this Pride and Prejudice is all the better for that, not the other way around. I used to read Pride and Prejudice yearly from 17, 18, 19, 20, all through my university days. I must say I haven't picked it up in probably 20 years. So I think this will be a really good time to read it. And of course, the natural companion between Pride and Prejudice and Bridget Jones will make it a really interesting pairing. I do love the story. I know I love the story, and I'm going to be interested to see how I feel about it, considering now I've read all of Ms. Austen's works, and this doesn't rank as my favourite. Possibly not even in my top 3. I'm not saying it's bad, but I'm really excited to actually revisit and see where I go with that. Now, the final book I'm picking up from my 90s reading list, Back to the Glasses, is a book that is on the Independent's top list. It came in actually as number 7. And if Bridget Jones was the defining chick lit book of the 90s, what was the defining lad lit book of the 90s? Fever Pitch by Nick Hornby. So this came in at number 7 on the Independent's bestseller, biggest selling books of the 90s list. Now, this was John, my husband's favourite book of the 90s. I didn't know him then. I didn't meet him till the very end of the 90s, but it was definitely his favourite book. I picked it up in the late 90s as well. I'm not an Arsenal fan. I am a soccer fan. I'm not sure if I'm ready to name my team on here yet. Let's just say it. West Ham. I'm a West Ham fan. But we will see. I haven't read this. I recently revisited High Fidelity from Nick Hornby, and I didn't like it. I just found it, a bit just laddie, a bit, bro humour. So we will see how I go. It wasn't a favourite, but again, I'm asking the question, can you go back 30 years and will it stand the test of time and still be a quirky, modern, fun classic, or will it actually disappear into the wasteland of, just leave it on the shelf for a few more years? But there is my revisit 3 favourite reads from the past tag. Now, going back 30 years is going to be interesting. I will really look forward to revisiting each of these books. So over the next few months, I will read probably 1 a month and hopefully just revisit them for you. I'm interested in what did you read in your university days, and how long ago do you think it takes for something to be deemed a classic as opposed to something that's just a little bit dated? But thank you for watching and have a great day.